from Politico. El Salvador won't return wrongly deported Maryland man? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. According to the corporate press, an innocent man from Maryland was deported to a prison. Okay, here's the real story. There was a guy who entered the country illegally. That's what the courts have determined. He was a member of MS-13 according to one court and an appellate court. He had an order for removal from this country. There was a temporary stay put on deportation related to fears he would face harm if he returned to El Salvador. Donald Trump's administration upheld the deportation order and said it was an administrative error, the oversight on the previous stay. However, he was now outside of the U.S. jurisdiction, and as a citizen of El Salvador, that's El Salvador's problem. A district court ordered the president to return to the United States a member of MS-13, illegal immigrant, from the jurisdiction of a foreign country. Something that not only Trump could not do if he tried, but I mean, he doesn't have the authority to force a foreign government to give up its citizens. He can pressure them and try. We get that. But they don't have the authority to order. So while the Supreme Court ruled Trump must facilitate the return of this man if El Salvador releases him, they said these courts can't order the president to engage in foreign policy negotiations. So now what ends up happening is Nayib Bukele, who visited the president, he's the president of El Salvador, he visited Trump, said, I'm not going to, what do you want me to do? Smuggle this guy back into the U.S. as a terrorist? And they said, no, but you can release him. And he says, we don't take kindly, like, we don't want to release terrorists from our prisons onto our own streets. He's an El Salvadoran man. We're not releasing a known terrorist. He said, we just went from the murder capital of the world to the safest country in the Western Hemisphere, and you're trying to reverse that? It's never going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
Now look at the reaction on Reddit from these. This is default. This is just default Reddit, okay? You go to reddit.com, you go to news, and what do you see? Top comment. So let me get this straight. These people committed no crimes. They were illegally detained and removed from the country against their will. And they're being held in a foreign prison indefinitely with no due process. And yet they still frame it as deportation and not kidnapping and human trafficking.
No crime.
Let's pause real quick. The only crime committed is illegal entry into the country, for which the penalty is deportation. Now, they were illegally detained. Incorrect. That was not an illegal detainment. You could argue that it wasn't an illegal, but they violated a court order through his deportation. But they're not being held in a foreign prison. The man is El Salvadoran. He's being held in his own prison. Mm-hmm. They want him back. Look at this. So kidnapping it is then. Either they don't want anyone reporting on the conditions of the prison or he's already dead. This is an effing problem. These are the only few logical conclusions. Trump told him to say this to subvert the decision of the courts. He is dead. They don't actually know where he is. Visits the U.S. We cannot guarantee he won't be deported to a prison in El Salvador by mistake. Why is it that all of these people, it's supposed to be politically neutral, but they omit the key details of what actually happened here?
So I think that, and can you scroll down a little bit? I want to see how many upvotes the main post has. 37,000. Okay, so this is what people need to start understanding better. That when we talk about the ascendance of the unhumans, that unhuman activity is on the rise. This is where it starts. It starts with people just willfully accepting lies about cases and then reacting to it, and then taking that and then running with it to its logical course. We have to fight back. And what you need to understand is that that's 37,000 people just on this one subreddit. There are millions of people who have this, what we call the fried mental model of the world, where they just still sit there and regurgitate everything the NPR tells them, the Facebook tells them, the Reddit tells them, whatever the NPR sales narrative is, they will immediately regurgitate it. And these people, by the way, live around you. They're in your schools, probably controlling your schools and libraries, by the way. And it's a huge problem.
Look at this comment. Do you want to read that one, Phil?
Leaving a legal resident of the U.S. to rot in a foreign prison should make every single member of Congress vote to impeach him. The fact they are silent and the fact Trump revels in sending people to a foreign prison will not be remembered kindly. His legacy is long gone.
He didn't send an American citizen to a foreign prison. He didn't send a man to a foreign prison.
He said a legal resident. So, I mean, that
Oh, right. This guy was not a legal resident.
Nah,
right. He was here illegally with a stay. over, I guess, safety concerns. And the Trump administration argues they actually did have the authority to deport him, and it wasn't a mistake. But this guy's not going to a foreign prison. He went home. He went home. Could you imagine a guy breaks into your house, steals a bunch of your stuff, eats all your food, and then he's holding a bunch of your gold and rare earths that you store in your house that you've exported from China at the last minute, imported, and then you go,
I
hey,
have so many rare earths in my mud room.
and then you go, buddy, hey, you're gonna pay the penalty. I'm gonna give you a ride home. Come on, my van's right here. Hop in. We'll drive you home. No, my wife's gonna be mean to me. It's okay. I'll give you a ride home.
So, when we say make America great again, I really come back to this point of, you guys remember when the ACLU, which if you don't know what that acronym is, American Civil Liberties Union, actually
Anti-Civil Liberties Union now.
well, that's what it is now, but it used to actually stand for protecting our civil liberties. Now they spend so much time protecting and defending these illegal immigrants or people who aren't actually deserving of those civil liberties. It is insane to me. And they're fighting so hard to get this guy back. Here's the conversation. And I laid this out a week and a half ago before this guy came and El Salvador came and said, no, we're not doing that. It was quite literally, okay, Donald Trump must facilitate. Here's the conversation. Hey, yeah, we're going to need that guy back. And El Salvador's like, what, our citizen? Yeah, that guy. Nope, not going to happen. Well, shit, I tried.
Not just that. It's like, if there was a crime the man committed whose penalty was answering for the murder of somebody, and we wanted to extradite him, saying, you can't protect this man, he murdered some. No. This is a guy whose crime was he's a gang member who entered illegally, for which the penalty is go home.
So
he was sent home. By what logic are we going to extradite him back here?
And here's the crazy part. So the day before the Supreme Court announcement came down saying, hey, 9-0, got to get him back, Pam Bondi and I can't remember who else did a conference saying, hey, we're dropping all these charges. It's like they knew that Supreme Court decision was coming as it was supposed to be. And they said, we're going to drop these charges because we can't say we have to bring you back to get your due process for the crimes that you allegedly committed. We're not charging you with any crimes.
Yeah.
The only crime you have is being here illegally.
The Supreme Court said not that he could, they said Trump can't be compelled to have a foreign government give up one of their own citizens. They said in the event that El Salvador does release this man, Trump must provide the plane for him to come back. Mm-hmm. So if the guy is freed and then says, I would like to come to America, Trump's supposed to fly him back. So Nayib Bukele just goes, nah, he's a criminal. He ain't going nowhere.
Perfect.
I mean,
So
thankfully, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what people need to understand, though, is that so the Maryland Man hoax, and that's what we're calling it, it's the Maryland Man hoax. This is a disinformation operation that's being run, and Reddit, of course, is a huge channel for disinformation that's being run against President Trump. Obviously, they're trying to break up his relationship with Bukele. They're trying to use Bukele as someone who's, by the way, beaten these people at every single one of their games, including the judges and including the courts down there, including the liberal media. But now they're terrified of Trump actually using these tactics in the United States, not just for illegals, by the way, but for hardened criminals, murderers, and the rest of actually locking up gangs and throwing people away and throwing away the key. And so in order to do that, you've got to run a sort of low level. We're starting to see our versions of the Color Revolution playbook be used against Trump. And one of the key elements of the Color Revolution playbook is the locking up of nonviolent citizens. So this is always something they use. This is, by the way, something they accused of Gaddafi of doing. This is something they accused across the Middle East when they were knocking off regimes. They would say, you're locking up people, you're going against your own people, you're attacking your own people. They said it about, you think of autocrat after autocrat, dictator after dictator, but now you're using that same narrative. He's attacking his own people. They know that they're lying. They don't care that they're lying. They know that we are telling the truth. The thing is, they're going to run the operation anyway because they can still reach the people on Reddit, the people on NPR, the people on Facebook, which, by the way, Mark Zuckerberg has done nothing to clean up. And they'll use that to try to erode support away from Trump as much as possible.
We do have this story we'll get to in a little bit with Meta facing off on antitrust. So Zuckerberg's begging the White House to back off. Yeah, well, Zuckerberg, he's not backing off the censorship.
Nope.
We still deal with it every single day. He's done nothing about this. Now, granted, they got rid of the fact-checking thing, but, we'll see. What I will say about Nayib Bukele is the corporate press in the United States claimed that he was arresting and jailing innocent people and doing all these awful things. And you know what my response to that is? Abraham Lincoln. And then thank you and have a nice day. Nayib Bukele had a country that was overrun by various gangs that did whatever they wanted. So many people in Central and Central America and South America have tried to combat these narco gangs, these cartels, and they die. In Mexico, mayors are killed by the cartels if they dare defy them. El Salvador was brutal, one of the highest rates of murder in the world. He says it's the murder capital of the world. Well, it's disputed. Maybe Honduras, actually, or maybe Venezuela, depending on how you're counting the murders, but still one of the worst. He gets in and he says, this is war against criminal, evil, rapists, child traffickers, drug dealers, and we're going to save this country. And so we lament when in times of conflict and great war, like his country was dealing with, that the innocent do get swept up in these things. Right. But everybody in this country, when asked if you said, was Abraham Lincoln a good president, you get something like 95% say he was a great president. When people are asked who is the greatest American president, some 83% say Abraham Lincoln. And what did he do? He arrested politicians who disagreed with him. He threatened to arrest a sitting Supreme Court justice for disagreeing with him. He set up a suspension of habeas corpus from Pennsylvania to D.C. to arrest anybody he wanted for any reason. And their argument was, we need to be able to move from Pennsylvania to D.C. without question and without threat or risk, because
which, ironically,
Maryland was a slave state.
I was going to say, which ironically, it would have covered a lot of Maryland men.
Yeah. Indeed.
Just like Maryland, right. Just like this Maryland
man. And so, is anybody going to come out and be like, yay, we love that Abraham Lincoln was arresting random people without charge or trial? No, of course not. But he was a man at war seeking to preserve the Union. And with Nayib Bukele, and to a great degree with Trump, you have what I describe as extenuating circumstance in a wartime president. It's not an idea I've come up with. I think Will Chamberlain's been talking about this for like 7 or 8 years, that you have a deep state that is willing to imprison, jail, or in some respects, you have components that want to assassinate Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He needs to use what powers he can, constitutionally, I argue, but to the extent that he can, to preserve this nation. Now, I don't see Trump doing anything as egregious as Abraham Lincoln did. He's deporting people under the Alien Enemies Act. It's a law. He's allowed to do it. The Supreme Court said he's allowed to do it. Abraham Lincoln was like, habeas corpus, nah, you can't do that. He did it anyway. So Nayib Bukele arrested overwhelmingly all gang members and criminals, and we don't know the extent to which innocent people may have been wrapped up, and we lament that if that's the case. But what Nayib Bukele did in transforming El Salvador is historic, and it's a story of legend, of a man who came in, resisted the cartels, survived the cartels, rebuilt his nation, made it one of the safest, if not the safest, in the Western Hemisphere. Now you've got people of wealth flocking to El Salvador because he's fixed it and made it into a beach paradise.
Surf City and Surf City 2.
Did you hear what he said when they brought this up in the White House today? What Bukele said?
A couple of it, but
the line that I love was he reframed the entire thing, and he said, "You want to talk about how many people we've incarcerated, and yet you never talk about how many people we liberated."
It was something like,
perfect.
You say that we incarcerated thousands. I say we liberated millions.
We liberated millions,
and he's right.
And it's exactly right. You can't have a functioning society if you allow these homicidal maniacs to roam free, to roam out of prisons. That's why we have prisons in the first place. There are other ways to deal with crime, by the way, but a homicidal maniac, a psychopath, a gang, a narco gang, etc., you can't allow them out. And so you have to deal with them some way to allow for freedom, the viability of families, the raising of children. This is how societies continue. This is how you get your birth rates back up, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot that goes into that. But the point being is, if you don't allow for your basic function of civilization to continue because unhumans are in control of your country, then guess what? You will lose your country, which is the situation that El Salvador was in. And it's also why I believe Bukele won. It's like the largest presidential victory in history.
I mean, so the story I like to tell is I was playing poker at National Harbor in D.C. That's the casino. Guy sitting to my left was, everybody was talking. He mentioned that someone brought up Trump and people were talking about it. People were pretty chill because poker players tend to be more right-leaning. Not all of them. And dude brought up, he was from El Salvador. And then I was like, oh, really? Why'd your family come here? I was like, it was really bad. It was crime. And then I was like, oh, yeah. How do you feel about Bukele? And he goes, we're moving back. And I'm like, you're moving back to El Salvador? And he's like, it's really nice now. Yeah, we want to go back. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Congratulations, sir. I'm glad you've gotten your country back, and I'm glad you have a leader like Naib. I'm excited to see what he does. Plus, you got Max and Stacy down there, Bitcoin revolutionaries, and El Salvador, of course, is the land of Bitcoin.
So, what I'm hearing, this is what I'm hearing through all this, guys, is Donald Trump, depending on who you ask, could be the greatest president of your lifetime or the worst president of your lifetime. But what I'm hearing through this is he's not going far enough. He needs to take that next step and be that real dictator everyone wants him to be, and we can really have America back.
I don't know that he needs to be a dictator. My point is the powers of the Constitution afford him the ability to go after Adam Schiff and any J6 member who lied, manipulated witnesses, or committed crimes. These lawyers at the DOJ who they're just firing, taking a light approach. And, I do trust them. A lot of people got mad at Kash Patel and Dan Bongino because they appointed that guy, what's his name, Jensen?
Jensen.
Yeah. You know about this story? And that he had said disparaging things about J6ers, and they're like, why is this guy staying on? And I say, guys, there's no one I trust more on this than Dan Bongino. And with all due respect to Kash Patel, who I think is also great, Dan is a bull. I cannot see that guy going back on his word or betraying the people who stood by him and helped him and who he wants to serve. So I have concerns, but for the most part, I'm like, let him cook, man.
I have nothing but respect for Kash and Dan for sure, and at the same time, though, I can also understand why people are asking questions.
Agreed.
After everything that we've seen come out of the FBI over the last decade, Tucker's got a huge interview with this guy Kurt Weldon, by the way, who, funny enough, so they talk about something that happened on his campaign in 2006 that was actually the very first campaign I ever interned on, so this is like part of the Poso origin story or whatever, that Tucker has the guy on that I worked for, and the campaign got raided like a month before the election. And it is 2006 when Mueller was still FBI director. And this was a time where, by the way, nobody was talking about this yet. Guess what they claimed that he was involved with? Russia.
Oh, wow.
20 years ago, he was an agent of Russia and his daughter, et cetera. And it's like, and by the way, all of this was because he was ringing the bell on 9/11 stuff that the government knew prior to the attacks. And suddenly the FBI came in and destroyed his entire career. Kurt Weldon. And yeah, that's kind of, I got my start.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.